All right. Thanks for bearing with us through some technical difficulties as we get going. But welcome to the Crosse Commission's Saturday Night Power Hour. A little bit earlier tonight, so we got everything in before everyone is too busy watching March Madness tonight. Hopefully, well, actually, I don't know. Tennessee, Texas in the women's tournament might have an exciting finish going on as we're going on right now. But we'll get you out before the men's Elite Eight. I'm Ryan. We got Jake and Safe. And we got another nutty Saturday of lacrosse to talk about today. So while the hoops might have been chalky, the lax has been anything but that this spring, and that trend continues today.
Hey, yeah, good. Glad to be back on the mics. Feeling bad about Jay's Nation. We'll get to that.
Is the flag at half mast?
I was emotionally prepared. I told you, Jay. I was like, if there's a team that's going to go 0-5 in the Big Ten, I think it's going to be Hopkins.
The band is lowered their trombones.
It's a dark day in Trenton and Baltimore.
It's sad.
But Ohio State, but you got to. I guess you hired up security because Ohio State won and beat Rutgers today. So
it's going to be like that Homer Simpson meme. It's like he comes out of the bushes with the Hopkins, comes back, and then it's just like, go Buckeyes. Shameless.
Got the Ryan Day goatee going.
Where are you, Lou Holtz?
This is...
Jake, which Blue Jays team that's rivals with your teams are you happier seeing a downfall with? The Johns Hopkins or the Toronto?
Oh, Toronto. For sure. Oh, for sure. I call them the Toronto Stink Jays. Those guys stink. No,
they're not even American.
My residual in-state affection means I can never fully prey on Hopkins' downfall. I like seeing all the in-state teams do well too much.
Because boosts your RP?
That too,
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, man, it's kind of hilarious seeing Hopkins 0-2, but at the same token, that's a nice quality win for Syracuse if they get their act together. So,
yeah, it's wild. The RPI and kind of like seeing like when you're looking at it right now, like you have Princeton and Maryland 1-2 who have 2 top 5 wins, and then the next 5 teams have 0 top 5 wins. The next 5 teams in RPI have no top 5 wins.
Syracuse only has 2 top 20 wins, and that's good enough to get them 7 in RPI.
They have 2 top 20. They have 2 top 20 wins over 18 and 19,
and that's good enough to get them to 7.
Yeah, Harvard is 5th.
Yeah.
I mean, Penn State has lost 2 in a row. They're 0-2 in Big Ten play. They have the Cornell win, which is looking like one of the most pivotal 4 minutes of the entire season. And they're still 6th in the RPI. Like it's pretty fascinating seeing how it's also like Duke's 10th and they haven't beaten a top 10 team. So Cornell is the number 1 team in the country. They're down at 8th in RPI. So it's pretty, it's a wonky season so far, for sure. Okay, we got like 9 people in here, which is pretty good. I like seeing that. If the 9 people in here have liked the first 5 minutes of this video, it's like, wow, these guys are just killing it. Just they're pushing in transition, picking up loose balls,
hustling on those ground balls.
Yeah, playing strong man-to-man defense. What should they do?
They should hit that like button. If they like what they're seeing, hit like. If you really like what you're seeing, hit subscribe because we go live every Saturday. We also drop our podcast on here as well. So hit the subscribe and hit that notification button too, because as you see every Saturday, we kind of start at a different time depending on the schedule of games. Tonight we're doing it to get ahead of the men's Elite Eight in basketball. So thank you for joining us. And we're going to go around the games. Where shall we start off first? How about we go to Nike Stadium? I got it right.
Good job. Proud of you.
But yeah, Army gets their feather in the cap in a 13-12 victory over North Carolina. Really fun game up in West Point today. Army survives a last stand by UNC in a very funny sequence where Carolina really hustled the heck out of the ride to force a turnover, and then they just slowed things down on offense and ran out of time, basically. But that Army defense comes up big in multiple cases in that fourth quarter to come away with the victory. So that gives the Black Knights, as we've been discussing, kind of that second path if the Patriot League tournament becomes the Patriot League tournament like it always is, and gets them a real big signature victory. The Rutgers and Yale wins earlier in the year might not have held up as much, but this North Carolina one should at this state of the season. And for UNC, good effort, but not enough to kind of seal the deal and really be on easy street heading into ACC play. But all in all, really fun game. And again, Army's gutsy efforts get rewarded here with a big non-con victory.
Absolutely. I was really impressed with like the last few minutes of the game when we were all talking about it. The DMs, just North Carolina, I think in total at least 3 possessions, maybe 4, depending on how that one scrum where they lost it and then regained it. But it's just they didn't even get a shot off, and this is when they were down 1 with about 3 minutes of play, and Army just was able to just suffocate North Carolina's chances of tying it up and going overtime. The Owen Duffy double team, they're just kind of smashed, but kind of laid on the ground. It's a little bit scary for anybody who's watching it live. But
that was an old NFL primetime, jacked up.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. It was kind of brutal. Yeah, I would say the 253 mark. Owen just gets absolutely hammered. But right as you know, just a really strong effort by Army to get a really big quality win. North Carolina is top 5 RPI. Princeton, Maryland success. And they have 4 top 5 RPIs. The rest of the country combined has 5. So this is actually was really important for Army to get in there and just you can get one of these really rare non-top Princeton or Maryland top 5 wins. So it's going to help buttress their argument for a bid. They don't win the Patriot League, which it's definitely up in the air given what they suffered through last week against BU. So I know I picked North Carolina, but not regretting it. This is valiant effort for their part. But we're really great job by Army to defend home field and get a really coveted top 5 win. This North Carolina team, I think, should do well in the ACC. So this win against the Tar Heels, should stand up and maybe still be a top 5 RPI win by the time Selection Sunday. So really great effort by Army.
I was really impressed. Army, this isn't your, I guess, older brother. Maybe in some ways, maybe not your uncle's Army team. They have just dudes on offense. Serious elite talent that can play. Jackson Eicher had a double hat trick on 6 goals on 12 total shots. They have Evan Plunkett, obviously. I'll talk about him in a second. I really was impressed with what they did with him on offense. He was a preseason first-team All-American. And we saw that last year, too. How strong they were offensively and going back to when they had Nick Turn. Defensively, they've really gone back to kind of classic Army. The physicality, Pilot's tremendous pull. Christian Mazur's a really, really good short stick. They were great in front of their own in front of their crease. There were a lot of loose balls, rebounds you got to be careful about against a team like Carolina. Second chance opportunities. Army really just gobbled it all up. And as Safe mentioned, I mean, they didn't make it easy on themselves at all with the clearing and things like that. It felt like Army was on defense, kind of like the last half of that fourth quarter, and Carolina really pinned them in, but they didn't get a lot of great looks. There was one Petro hit like the pipe, and it ricocheted all the way back out to midfield. Duffy had his moments for sure. I mean, his speed off the end line. I mean, you just ask that guy, put the ball in his stick and say, go. He's a danger. But when they needed to, they got this double team, the slide and big hit from Pilot. This was Army's best offensive game of the season, and considering the competition. Maybe the Yale game, they were obviously jumped out big, but I loved what they did in this game. Evan Plunkett has really struggled shooting the ball for Army. He's came in shooting 19% on the season, which for a guy who was a first-team All-American midfielder in preseason is, I mean, for anybody, 19% is tough, but especially for a guy like that. And today, they used him really as their primary facilitator because he's still going to command a bunch of attention. He's still going to draw a pull. He's still going to get an early slide if he gets a step on his defender because you have to respect what he can do. But he had 5 assists all season, and he had 5 assists today for Army. And he was the guy who was really finding the next man and really finding Iker as well inside at attack, who's their leading scorer. Iker really played kind of off ball, and Carolina just gave him too much room. A lot of his opportunities. I also loved seeing Army push transition. They got some really key goals in that third quarter, second half. Whenever Carolina kind of got close, I mean, they stretched it to 12-9, I think, basically off like 2 quick transition goals, getting out an early offense. We saw them struggle a bit last week in the 6-on-6 half court against BU. So this was a really strong game plan by Joe Alberici and that coaching staff. They kind of had Carolina on their heels really from the get-go. They got up 2-0 early, and Carolina fought back. And certainly Brady Wambach is, I think you could argue, maybe as important to North Carolina as any player in the country. I mean, Carolina won 73% of the faceoffs in this game. And this is another game where I kind of talked about this on the pod with Safe on Wednesday. Carolina's defense, better than some of its parts, kind of you refer to it. Don't have a lot of big name stars, but they've played well this season. They've been dominant in Carolina's, what's Carolina's record at this point?
They are 7-2 now.
7-2. In 6 of their 7 victories, Carolina's defense has been dominant against Michigan, Stony Brook, Penn, Hofstra, Jacksonville, High Point. None of those games, those 6 wins, did they give up more than 25% in defensive efficiency. But in their 3 games against Hopkins, Princeton, and now this game, Hopkins was 39% offensive efficiency against them. Princeton was 45%, and Army today was 37% again. This is despite the fact Carolina was +7 in possessions. I didn't know. I didn't know. I said it. I picked Army to win this game, but I didn't think if it was like a +7, +8, +9 possession disparity that Army could get the win, and they did because their offense really took it to Carolina. And I think this is maybe a sort of cause for potential concern. There's still a good Carolina team, and it was good to see them get a lot of different faces involved offensively. They had Ty English with 2 goals, Ryan Levy 2 goals, Brevin Wilson, a freshman, with a goal. But this defense seems that there's every team is going to have a bit of a gap in their at least statistically their performances when you play top end teams versus teams ranked below you or more back end top 20, whatever you want to call it. But it's starting to be a bit of a gulf defensively for Carolina. And Wambach is kind of keeping them in these games. I mean, he dominated against Princeton. He dominated today against Army again. It's kind of giving them a bit of a shield, I think, for that defense, which, again, I think Petro's done a good job with it overall, but you can kind of see them lacking some of that high-end personnel. And Army really took it to them. So something to watch for Carolina. For Army, look, they started last year 7-0. They lost to BU, and then they went on the road to Chapel Hill and won. And they were in the top 5, and they were looking poised for a potential tournament bid. And then they lost to Colgate, I think the week after, and their season just kind of spiraled. Now they are this season. They started 7-0. They lost to BU, and they just beat Carolina by 1 goal to get a big win. So to answer Cam's question, does this say that Army is for real? I think this is a really good team. We need to see how does April and May go, because that's always the question with Army. Army is always a team that's kind of ahead of the pack early in the season. They start great. We always remember those games they played against Syracuse in the Dome, where there was a headache for Cuse, and Army won a couple of them. How do they handle this next 1 or 2 months in Patriot League play? Because the Patriot League is tricky. It's hairy. There's a lot of competitive teams in there. But I think Army is – I don't think anyone will question. Army is pretty clearly the most talented team in that league by a distance, I would say. I think BU's a little – BU beat Army again, but I think BU overall is a little down. Navy with the face-off kind of issues is kind of falling off. Colgate's a fun team, but they're going to run hot and cold.
Yeah, next week's going to be interesting to see in Hamilton. Are we going to get the hot Colgate or the cold Colgate against Army?
Army should run the table in Patriot League play the rest of the way. If they do that, I think this is definitely a quarterfinal potential team, and maybe more than that. Right now I would say I think we'll kind of get into this more. I think there's maybe a bit of a separation in kind of this top 8. I think Army would be in that second group with UNC and Syracuse and maybe Ohio State. I'd definitely put Ohio State in there. Maybe Penn State. So, we need to see how they finish, I think, is the real question, because this looks exactly like last year so far. I mean, the way they've started is basically identical. And this year's Carolina, this more impressive beating this Carolina team than beating last year's Carolina team. But how do they finish, I think, is the question.
Yeah, and as we've seen in the chat by MMH, they should have beaten VU, though. But I think that's the case with these Patriot League games, is that Army finds themselves in situations where they should win these games, and because the Patriot League's the random number generator it always is, they get themselves in a game and sometimes fall on the short end of it. So, yeah, I think next week's going to be a very good insight into it. Going up to Hamilton, if upstate New York in April is not always days like today, too. So it could get interesting.
They're at Navy after that, which whatever you want to say about Navy, they didn't look great today against Colgate. They've lost a couple. Army, Navy, and Annapolis is a different beast. Mm-hmm. So these next 2 games because after that they're home to Bucknell and they're home to Loyola, who might be the bottom 2 teams in the Patriot League. Definitely Loyola, but Bucknell as well, kind of in that, fighting for that last spot. So if they get through these next 2 weeks on the road, they'll be attacking it. And, as Mark, I think, said in the chat, they need their resume still kind of is a little lean maybe overall. But if they keep winning, they'll be in that conversation. The team is really good, and even going with it though, how long what's Coletti's status? That's kind of maybe there's the safety net in these games that you kind of lose. So they got by without him today. I mean, incredibly impressive. But that's something to watch for. So, no, I think this is definitely a top 10 team. How far can they go? I think really the next couple of weeks tells us that.
Mm-hmm. All right, it was ACC opening day with a classic rivalry on display. And what do you know? Syracuse and Virginia play within 2 goals of each other, like clockwork. So Syracuse now leads the all-time series by 1 game, and the scoring on aggregate by 3 goals. Still one of the wildest stats in college sports about how even this series is. And didn't disappoint today. Syracuse 12, Virginia 10. Virginia off to a very hot start in this one. Put the Orange down 5-1. But as we like to say, lacrosse is a game of runs. Syracuse gets a couple spurts here and there in the second and fourth quarters and the beginning of the third quarter. Got cold again. Virginia claws back, but then another big finish for the Orange. And the Orange defense once again, big reason why they win this game. And have to say some very good goaltending, to say the least, in this one too, between McCool and Nunes had himself a nice game as well. But in the end, the Orange claw out a tough victory in Charlottesville, 12-10, to take another entertaining version of this rivalry, though, for a rivalry known for its offensive fireworks, a nice little change up with a good defensive duel between the Orange and the Hoos.
I'll let Ryan kind of give his thoughts, since big one for his Orange. Syracuse now, as Ryan said, has the all-time lead over Virginia, 22-21. The total goals in the series is now 567 Cuse to 564 Virginia. And Syracuse has won 2 in a row in the series. And overall, even they've won this decade. I think they now have a winning record over Virginia this decade with this, which is surprising considering this is where Syracuse has been. And I mean, maybe not surprising though. I mean, this rivalry, considering, but when you consider where Virginia has been, won a national championship and a couple more Final Fours, won a title in 2019 as well. This is still based exactly what you'd expect from this game every year. So those are now updated numbers. Finally, someone's got a bit of a couple goal advantage, massive cushion.
Probably, if they fight in the ACC, if they face each other in the ACC tournament, who knows? Maybe that'll tighten back up. But yeah, I think Virginia's looking improved the past couple of weeks. I know that doesn't really mean much for their resume at this juncture because they're now sitting at 5-5, so they're at 500, but they've been playing a bit better the past couple of weeks. You've seen that progress kind of go. You saw it a little bit in the Maryland game too. So I think they definitely came out as a team with more desperation. And I think even though this isn't a vintage Virginia year by any means, I think the effort was definitely there. And I think this is a sneakily good, tough win for the Orange. It's a rivalry game. It's at Klockner, heated environment, and it's one of these throw out the record book games. So as much as, again, it's not going to be as big of a victory over Virginia on the road as it would be in most years, I think it's still a very important first step for the Orange. Start off ACC play on the right foot. This is a game that could have easily gotten away very quickly after that first half. But I like the resiliency out of this Orange team, because Orange teams in the past, you go down like that in the first quarter in a game you were the favorite in, that could have snowballed really quickly. But they didn't panic. They kept to the game plan. They didn't let the fact that Nunes was making some good saves in this game too, get in their heads at all. And again, I think this was another case where this defense has really been the reason why Syracuse is starting to take that next step this season. Because, again, they're coming up with some very big stops at the end of these games. You saw it a bit. You saw it in the Colgate game. You saw it in the Hopkins game. And you saw it again today. The defense is stepping up when they need to. And it's really helping out when the offense goes cold from time to time. And I think especially that last possession, O'Doherty making the switch to let's throw Virginia off, run a zone defense on them, just completely threw Virginia's offense off pace, and it really works. So I'm really liking how the defense is stepping up in these high-pressure situations, because that's really helping this Orange team grow in their maturity. And again, I think the offense didn't panic when things were going wrong with them. Obviously, I know the headline's going to be, well, here's another big game, and Spallina's only got 1 assist. And, Hiltz was left off the scoreboard for most of the game till he got 2 in the fourth. Yeah, with the game winner. Yeah, game winner and the empty netter. So I know people are like, oh, their big guys need to produce a little bit more, but I think given the context of how things were going, Virginia's ride was looking really good today as well. I think that's a game where you're happy with what you see because, again, if this is the late stage Desco or early Gate years, this is a game that gets out of hand and they lose in embarrassing fashion 18-6. And here they just stick to the plan, keep a cool, even head, and come away with a nice victory out of it on the road. So good job out of the Orange and a good start to ACC play.
It's tough for Virginia. If you said the biggest edge, I mean, Syracuse has a couple edges in this game, but one of the biggest ones you
and I forgot to mention, this is a game where, the face-offs advantage was wiped away, and again, they didn't panic.
That's exactly what I was going to mention. John Mullen's been a all-American level face-off guy this year. And, I mean, Gobrio was back for Virginia, but he hasn't been a guy at Mullen's level. Virginia, if you're drawing it up, what you need to see in this game, you need to see 3 failed clears for Syracuse. You need to see 60+% at the faceoff dot. You need to see Virginia overall had a +4 in the possession margin in this game, and couldn't get the W at home. And we saw Virginia against Maryland, where they sped Maryland up and they got them off their game. Maryland's clearing was struggled in a way it hadn't yet up to that point. They turned the ball over like 20 times, almost 10 more than their season average, and they lost by 6. This was, as Ryan mentioned, closer, and they played better. Virginia's defense has put up some really strong performances. I mean, the first half here, they were great. Syracuse only scored on 4 of 17 possessions, 4 on 23 shots. But Virginia, you have a 5-1 lead in the first quarter, and then you score 5 goals the rest of the game. That's pretty tough. They're clearly working hard, and they're trying, and the coaching staff is as much as they can. They've definitely got the ride and much more effective than it was early in the year, where it felt like it was sort of a house of cards a bit. But you're just trying to figure out where's the win going to come from for Virginia. What's the scenario where they win and one of these big games? And this was probably one of them, especially in a game that maybe some trap game vibes. I mean, you got for Cuse, and not that they would ever overlook this game, but you consider the games Cuse has coming up. They got Notre Dame soon. They got Cornell soon. Carolina at the end of the year. And this is a bit of a gauntlet for Cuse the rest of the season. This could have been won, especially what we talked about on the pod, the way this game is played. If Virginia's going to win a game, it's got to be a breakneck kind of pace. Game gets a little chaotic. That's this game to a T. But credit to Cuse, they kept this game. Cuse managed to play and win a kind of composed game, a game where they had fewer possessions, where they needed to play at a bit of a slower tempo. You think about, and especially in that second half, like the first half, Syracuse timed a first shot, 24 seconds in the first quarter. Right? Like almost immediately, any chance they got, they shot. Second quarter, 37 seconds, 42 seconds. So they were taking up a significant chunk, half the shot clock in that second half on their offensive possessions, and that's where their offense really came through and played very well. So it's tough for Virginia. You just don't know what it has to be. Noon's played well in addition to that too, and it's just not really happening for him this year. I think for Cuse, this is an encouraging victory. The way that they were able to win, I think the offense as well. Look, this team, Spallina I think that situation is what it is at this point. Same with Hiltz. Hiltz has been in college for 6 years. Something like that. Spallina's the back end of his junior year. You know what you're getting from those guys. Cuse is going to go as far as Sam English and Michael Leo take them from the midfield. I mean, those are going to. I would still move. Maybe consider moving Leo to the attack. They had Peyton Anderson in, the 5-star true freshman. Surprised we hadn't seen more from him yet. He scored 2 goals. I think that was a good move. They needed a different element beside Deere alongside Spallina and Hiltz. But Leo and English are 2 first-team All-American caliber midfielders. I mean, Leo is their best dodger, one of the best, and Sam English does everything for that team. So if Michael Leo and Sam English have 5 goals and 2 assists, Syracuse is going to have a good game offensively, because those are the guys who are going to go to the cage and draw slides. If they struggle, then Cuse's offense is going to struggle. So I think it's encouraging that those guys stepped up and really, wanted the moment, wanted the ball late. That's probably where this Cuse team is what's going to decide for them is from the midfield. Wide Hoddle as well, a goal. So, that's what you're looking for Cuse. The midfield is going to row. The midfield is going to be what drives this Cuse team. And today they were really good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much more to add. You guys hit all the points. I will give, but noted guys, like, I think, like, win on the road is also kind of important. Like a tough game like this is just, the confines of the dome. You had that one Maryland game on the road, which, had its own circumstances with the weather and everything. And the other games, like the Utah game was good. But, like, this was I think a UVA team that I think, Jake, you're right. Like, they were looking like to snag a ACC win and thought maybe this would be like one of their better chances. But Cuse ended up playing like what UVA normally tries to impose on people, like had twice the number of cause turnovers as Virginia had, and 8 turnovers of their own to 13 for Virginia. So this was able to withstand Virginia's ride and end up making it more difficult for UVA actually in terms of getting their offense together, especially after that first quarter. So defensively, yeah, I thought this was like kind of really good game for Syracuse in terms of like confidence and going into that Notre Dame game, which we all know the numbers now. 10 out of the last 12 the Irish have won. With I believe 7 in a row, right now the streak for the Fighting Irish. So having this game under their belt, and then this game, next one is at the Dome, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. So
hopefully we're not doing any halftime ceremonies.
Exactly. Save those for another week. But especially like how tight the ACC is going to be. Like Virginia was going to obviously give them everything they had, just given their season. That they knew that conference play was the only real way to turn it around. So being able to like go into that environment, come out with a win after going down 5-1, I think shows a lot of character for Syracuse, and it's a good sign for the rest of ACC play.
All right, we'll return to ACC play in a little bit. We're going to now turn our attention to the Big Ten. We'll start with Michigan beating Johns Hopkins 11-8. So the Wolverines now 2-0 in the catbird seat in Big Ten play, while Johns Hopkins is in the basement at 0-2. Hopkins is also piling onto their injury list in this game as well. But for the Wolverines, now 2-0 in Big Ten play. Get a good game, good win at home here. They're at home in Ann Arbor next week for a big one against Penn State as well. So Michigan getting things together at the right time, as they have been the past couple of years under Connery. So Wolverines looking to be in quite good shape for setting themselves up for the back end of the year with the Big Ten tournament that they have excelled in the past 2 years. Now they're getting themselves a nice position for a higher seed for that Big Ten tournament.
Mark, the Hopkins injury report is bad. This
is a mash unit now.
It's guys coming off the battlefield of the Somme. At this point, it's just not good. It was good to see Patrick Hackler on the sideline cheering the team on the fourth quarter, but that injury looked, Achilles maybe.
Yeah, I think most of us were watching it live because I remember all of it jumped in the DM, but it was non-contact injury. Just literally just watch the kid crumble. It was just definitely sad to see them having to be carried off. It's just another injury and a long line of injuries for the Jays this year. I mean, Jake, I don't know how much we're going to talk about this, but again, not having Russell Melendez available, kind of shows you again. We had another game where Hopkins' offense was kind of I don't want to say abysmal or go over the top, but dysfunctional, inefficient, non-threatening. I mean, there's a lot of adjectives we could use here. I'm I got no problem with the effort. It's just like maybe misplaced effort. Especially sometimes on defense, we're talking about like a overly aggressive nature of the Hopkins D, but it just feels like everything's just like starting to come together in like a horrible sandwich of just ineptitude. I remember when we were picking midweek, I picked the Jays, but like there was a good part of me. I was like, this could be bad, in a away game after kind of a surprise loss to Rutgers with a Michigan team. Even though Jake, you had those great stats about like Michigan kind of failing to come to play in the post Maryland victory. They got the secret sauce today for whatever reason they were able to reverse that trend because it's just a strong right out of the gate that jumped out to 3-0 4-1 lead and then Jays just like kind of just didn't have much to answer for respond. It's just kind of felt real weird. Like the announcers kept like not that Oran had a bad horrible day at goal. That. 10 saves, 11 in, but like at the time, like Jays were like down like 4-0 and like he was starting to make a couple, and the announcers kept like, Oran really keeping them in the game. I'm like, I don't know about that. It's like kind of like, and that, again, not that it was all his fault for the goals.
He started well, and he stole some goals from key spots, but he lost it towards the end. He was going to his knees low on basically every Michigan shot. I don't think he's the reason they lost, but I mean, when you consider Hunter Taylor for Michigan really took some away from Hopkins as well. I mean, look, you're not going to win. I'll say finish, but you're not going to win many games where you say you have your goalie's below 50%. You shoot. I mean, Hopkins has been above 50% in 2 of their last 6 games. On save percentage. Their shooting percentage in their last 4 games, their highest shooting percentage was 29%. And they got outground balled 22-9 in this game. They got outground balled. It was 16-16 against Rutgers. In the 15-12 against Navy and against Syracuse, it was 21-13 for the Orange. And these are games in which Hopkins, they dominated faceoffs largely today. They dominated faceoffs against Navy. They had the better of the faceoffs against Rutgers. And when you're terrible when you're winning faceoffs and you're down mid single digits, if not more, in ground balls, that's brutal. You're not overcoming that. They failed 4 to Michigan's 1. That's right. So that's good. I mean, you're not gonna win many games like that. It's really just looking their shooting percentage, their first 6 games, they were above 40% in 2, above 33% in 4. Save percentage was, started to go after that Carolina game, but the first couple games, Towson and Loyola was good. Ground ball percentage, 56 against Denver, 50 against Towson, 39 against Georgetown. These can overcome it. We said like that team needed to. It's not as talented a team as it was last year, and you have to overcome that by. If you're an underdog in these games, you have to shoot the ball well, you have to get saves, and you have to pick up loose balls, and you have to do the little things. And this team is not doing that. They look kind of bereft of confidence, to be honest with you. Like they're just waiting for something to go right. They need we say like juice goal or something. They need something like that. I think if they could get a win, they could really be. They're still in these games. It's not like they're getting blown out or anything.
Even this game, as bad as it was, they fought back to tie it 8-8 with 10:30 left to play.
Man up, and they had man up chance, and they dropped the ball, and then you drop the ball in the next possession.
Exactly, and it's just maybe this wasn't meant to be this year. And given how bad some of the teams have been that were looking to be like maybe signature wins early this season, the Georgetown win, the UVA win. these, really having kind of the Loyola win, maybe to an extent, they haven't really stood the test of the season. They kind of have subpar season. So yeah, Auburn still has chance. But I remember distinctly before the conference play thinking like Rutgers Michigan game are bankable games, and if like the whole thing in my head was like those don't go well. Like the Penn State game, maybe now the Nittany Lions are maybe not as formidable, but that's still going to be at Panzer. But Maryland's going to be at College Park. The homecoming game against Ohio State. To me, I thought that was going to be definitely going to be a tough one. So yeah, just staring down the gauntlet the rest of the way. It's going to be kind of daunting. Jays have a real weapon in Callahan. I kind of feel like it's kind of a little bit wasted on the season, just given how dysfunctional and, just not, especially without Melendez in there. But, they could maybe get a little bit healthier. They can continue to get like strong face-off, but maybe that, I'm with you, Jake. I think they do need like a win to just shake off, the bad vibes of the last couple of weeks. Or even like a good moment, like early on in the next
goal,
game.
Something big goal.
Somebody's got to just do something to
take a lead. I mean, if they could have got it to 9-8, they need juice. It feels bad vibe is the word. They feel very lifeless.
Yeah, it's just weird because that was the one thing I could always count on with the Jays, like in the middle, even in the first couple seasons where it was like the rebuilding post Petra, like the energy. All that was never questioned. Even those first two seasons we were kind of bad. Jays, especially on the defensive end, just were always flying. Just feels a little bit listless or something. I don't know. It's just I think it's just like the early game today, but not being inefficient on the offensive end. Put them in a hole once you're down 4-0, they score one, and then you get Michigan gets right back to 5-1 to keep it a 4-goal lead. That pressure, I think just takes us, has an impact on them. And then, you have to explode and get a nice 5-goal third quarter, and then, really kind of get back into the game. But, the last 10 minutes, just absolutely nothing. Michigan scores the last 3 goals of the game, ends up winning, for the difference 11-8, and that's all she wrote. So, I mean, what's that line from Yogi Berra? It's getting late real early. Yeah, I mean, it really is. Jays are 18th in RPI, got 3 regular season games. Yeah, everyone gets in the pool for the Big Ten tournament, but and maybe being a 5th or 6th seed may be better for the Jays because the last 2 seasons got knocked out kind of early on, despite being
and you need to rack up as many wins as you can because at this rate, I think you need to win at least 4 to have any shot, at least 2 games, because even as good as the Big Ten is, just 1 win's not going to do it out of this.
I'm not Big Ten. No, gentlemen. I'm talking about the Big Ten tournament. I'm not the regular season. I'm going to watch the games and stuff like that. I'm just talking about I need them to get it together for the Big Ten tournament. I don't foresee Hopkins.
They need
1 and 2 the rest of the way. I'm not doing this for a fact or to get 1 and 2 the rest of the way. I'd be really happy with that. And because I really do think there's a possibility of going 0 and 3 the rest of the way here. But I need them to, as Jake kind of mentioned, get the spirit back up so that if they're going to get in the tournament, it's the Big Ten AQ. And it's maybe I was joking around before. I was Hopkins was never desperate enough to give a shit for the Big Ten tournament. That's why they get knocked out there. And now it's desperate. This is the time to be it's. I don't see an at-large possibility for the Jays at all. I mean, maybe they win.
There. They just need to win. Yeah. They need to win these games.
Exactly. They win Ohio State, beat Maryland Jet, and I'm back on board. But it's just just the way they've been playing, the way these other teams have been playing, and the fact that 2 of the last 3 are going to be on the road. I just need them to play better for Big Ten tournament time because that's not the only way I think they're getting in the tournament.
The Big Ten tournament, in all these conference tournaments, we've seen it. There's absolutely a motivation gap for for the teams that don't need it versus the teams that do need it. That doesn't mean you want to be in that spot. We talk about, you'd much rather be where Maryland and Princeton are, or Ohio State. It might be, but yeah, they need 3 or 4 wins. And so I thought 4, maybe, as we talked about, maybe if you get, with the way that the lack of top end wins in that top 10, if 2 of your wins are Princeton, Maryland, and Ohio State, maybe that's a different conversation. But they need so they need to get, if it's 1 in the rest of the way, it's got to be at least 2 in the Big Ten. You got to at least get to the Big Ten championship. If it's 2, then if they somehow win 2 of these next 3, they got to win the first one in the Big Ten quarterfinal. That's because that's probably where they fall. And then maybe a semifinal. So yeah, they got to turn it around. I mean, it's not over, but their season's on the brink, certainly. And yeah, they need a different vibe. Ryan, you're really happy with the results of today. I'm really happy with the results today. Safe is not, but if people are feeling like us and really happy watching this video, what should they do?
They should like this video. Even if your team lost, you should like this video too, because you like our analysis and how we
Safe, go like this video.
The right side. So see there we cheered up Safe a little bit by talking about some of the paths for Hopkins. So it's all good. Plus, Safe had the Eagles win the Super Bowl, so he's happy for the rest of the year. So. See,
look, he's got like 4 or 5 different teams.
I did put a Ohio State, Lakers, Eagles, and like Ohio State, like Golden State, and Chiefs a couple backs in today. Those are great.
All right. Speaking of being happy with Jake, so elsewhere in Big Ten play, Maryland with a 13-8 victory over Penn State. So Maryland gets a nice bounce back from the Michigan game, though. Penn State, boy, a surprising turnaround the past 2 weeks from going to where they were, nipping on number 1 in the country, to now 0-2 in Big Ten play after losses to Ohio State and to Maryland. So, Jake, as the Terp of the podcast, your insights on how this game went.
I think that Penn State's got issues that they got to hammer out. This is not the team I don't think they're definitely not as good as we thought they might have been a couple weeks ago. You're seeing some weaknesses on the defensive side of the ball, particularly their short sticks. Feel they're going into that matchup zone they like a lot. And look, it's always effective for them, but when you're still in a zone down 5 goals in the fourth quarter, it feels like you don't trust your man-to-man defense. And look, there's not a lot of great defenses you can run when you don't have shorties. Additionally, the face-off play was actually pretty good today, but it's been a bit more hot and cold rather than the really strong play they got from Baldwin at the beginning of the year. So I think this is going to be a tough matchup for Penn State either way. I think that Maryland losing to Michigan the way they did last week was probably also the worst thing that could have happened to them for Penn State, because this is a game that they have. I mean, Maryland tweeted out the all-time record. It's 43-2. Penn State's won just 2 in the 2 wins have been Big Ten play, so it's 2 in the last 10 years in Big Ten play for the Nittany Lions. The way they always Dixon kind of mentioned on the broadcast, there's a bit of a boogeyman effect, it feels like, with Penn State when they play against Maryland. They just make mistakes they don't normally make. They press in a way they don't normally press. I think it's definitely a matchup that's kind of in their head a bit. I mean, because look, the Penn State program that's, you could argue, been the second best program after Maryland in the Big Ten. They made 2 Final Fours. They've won a couple Big Ten titles. Hopkins has probably maybe been a little more consistent, if not as much high-end success. But so this is the team they're always chasing, and I think you get that vibe. But Maryland came out and played angry, I think, today. There was definitely a feeling that Maryland, they wanted to wipe the taste off out of their mouth, losing to Michigan again. So I think it was just a kind of a bad on the road too in College Park, a bad cocktail for the Nittany Lions. This game wasn't close. Penn State took the lead. After that, Maryland was up 4-2 at the end of the first quarter. They got up 6-2 early in the second, and Penn State never got closer than 4 goals. They just go ahead. I mean, safe.
Jake, I was wondering, like, maybe we were flipping back and forth, and we're starting to get the same vibe. But I'll throw this up to you as well. I got the same vibes while watching the Maryland Penn State games I had with the Notre Dame Duke game. Like,
I didn't see a lot of Notre Dame Dukes, but go ahead.
I would usually have like the main one on my TV, and then like on the computer screen here, I'll have like a silent game. So I was just watching it. It's just like, and it's similar. Like Duke scored first, and then the same as Penn State scored first, and then it was just like lockdown. Just literally just shut them down. But the halftime score for Maryland Penn State was 7-2. Halftime score for Duke Notre Dame was 8-2. And it's, the final score, 13-8 for Maryland and 14-7 in Duke and Notre Dame. And it's just like both, again, I'm sure Duke and Penn State came to play and stuff like that. But it's just like, it felt like both Maryland and Notre Dame were just like, we're just not, messing around here. Yeah. And it's just like really, because I think like this was a really important game for Duke and Notre Dame, because I think maybe one of those teams are not going to make it to the tournament. I was talking to our friend Mark in DMs. I was like, definitely was getting like 2022 vibes for both teams. I was, they both are different situations and still plenty of time to play. But I was just like kind of what we just said, like it's getting late early now, and this was kind of a important game for Duke, in terms of like I think getting back on track. But that side, like just the way like how Maryland and Notre Dame like handled their opponents today, I just felt like it's like eerily like similar, just like, absolutely like lockdown defense, just kind of smothering it at times. Like you held Penn State scoreless for I believe 22 minutes and 7 seconds. Notre Dame don't have the full recap, but they held Duke completely scoreless in the second period. So I'm sure there's like a similar like 20+ minute like offensive ineptitude. So I was just like, I was just kind of struck with like the similarities of how efficient and how well both Maryland and Notre Dame played against opponents who are top RPI opponents. So it's going to be opposed opponent with like a good challenge and probably has a chance to win, and just like gave them like just no chance, especially like after both giving up the opening goal to the away side. But like I said, I thought it was eerily similar, just how dominant both Maryland and Notre Dame were in the same kind of fashion, just defensively holding them down to single digits, like long periods of scorelessness, and just really efficient on the offensive end.
Yeah, I to touch upon that point too, I think it's kind of the urgency kicked in for both teams. I think with Maryland, they're in very good shape. I mean, their wins are better than anyone else's in the country to begin with, so they didn't have to worry too much about it. But at the same token, you don't want to have to expense yourself with an extra Big Ten tournament game if you don't need to, especially if you're going to be a 5 or 6 seed, where I believe the quarterfinals are still on campus, right?
The Big Ten, yeah.
Yeah, so you don't want to have to go on you don't want to give yourself an extra road game that you don't want to have, at the very least. And obviously on the, what you want is to not have to play a quarterfinal at all. So I think that kicked in with Maryland, and I think we expected Maryland to have a nice bounce back game after the Michigan game. But at the same token, I think them doing it in such a manner against Penn State, again, shows that Maryland's, in that top tier, but at the same token, kind of raises a few question marks for the Nittany Lions. They had the great victory against Cornell. And again, if they would have taken care of business last Sunday night, they're the number 1 team in the country. They've got the head-to-head win over Cornell, and
we all saw how that game went. Now the flip, Penn State's counter will be, we were down our entire starting attack. So none of that game was kind of played in optimal, I guess, condition. But nonetheless, look, they were down 4 goals with 4 minutes left.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing is now that they've entered Big Ten play, they've got to work on quite a few things here, and we'll see next week in Ann Arbor against Michigan. That becomes a very interesting game. Not that any Big Ten game isn't interesting, but that's going to be something to see. Then switching over to the ACC, as Mark said, sound the alarm on Duke feels very bubble. Yeah, I think that's the urgency that kicked in with Notre Dame, I think. Because just without a doubt, Notre Dame's a top 10, top 8 team, but they needed to rack together some wins for that resume because right now it's being held up by the Michigan win, which good win, but they need more meat on on those bones just because of the short schedule they have. And mission accomplished by rattling off Duke with that. The Michigan win looks better and better. You wish you had that Maryland win to really make you not have to worry about anything, but for Notre Dame, you need to start ACC play on a high note. You need to start to rack some wins to feel nice and comfortable on Selection Sunday so you don't have a 2022 situation on your hand where you've done a lot of good stuff. You've gotten a lot of wins, but it's not adding up in terms of the math because you had a shorter schedule to work with and not as many opportunities. So that's big for them. But as Mark said, with Duke, that's going to get a little bit more hairy. I know we've been keep on hammering home that Duke Cuse game could be very, very critical. But if you're the Blue Devils, I mean, you got blown out in this game, the Notre Dame. You lost to Denver
last week, too.
Yeah, you got blown out last week to a Denver team that's right now in a last time I checked, 1-goal game against Villanova at home. Yeah, they're in a 1-goal game against Nova.
7-6 Coyotes in the fourth quarter.
And it's not a good Denver team. That's not a good loss to have against Denver. Usually, if you're going up against Denver and lose, that's not good, but not terrible. But this year, that's not a great sign. And you fell short in that game against Princeton. So they've got the Michigan win if worse comes to worse and things go head to head, but they're not feeling comfortable at all. They got BU next week. That's a good but not great win. That's more so for a confidence boost, but it's going to come down to those UNC and Syracuse stretch, those back-to-back games in that 2-week stretch. Those are your opportunities. They're both the Koskinen. There's your opportunity. There's your season, really, if you're thinking about it.
They need to play better. I mean,
yeah,
you've lost.
They have not looked good these past 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, they trailed Denver in that game that game was 4-3 Denver after 1, 5-3 Denver after 2, and 9-3 Denver after 3. And I think it got up to like 8 or 9 at one point before it ultimately finished 13-6. It lost by 7 goals the last 2 games. And this game was 2-2 after 1. Notre Dame scores 8 goals in the second quarter. So it's 8-2. After 3, it was 10-4. I mean, they haven't been really in these games after the first quarter. I think both, even going back to the Penn State Maryland game, that game was, Ryan, what you've mentioned a lot for Maryland this year, they held Penn State to 2 goals over 2 goals on 22 possessions in the second and third quarter. I mean, they took the game away from them.
Just like college football coaches always talk about the middle 8. That's where Maryland feasts on.
Yeah, Penn State scored no goals on 11 possessions in the second quarter, 2 goals on 11 in the third quarter. And yeah, it was, to Safe's point, it was similar in this Notre Dame. Duke scored 2 goals on 13 possessions across. That's not a lot of possessions either. They won't win at faceoffs. 2 goals on 13 possessions in that, for this one. Notre Dame's offense was pretty clinical, but yeah, defensively dominated. I thought both of these games, Maryland kind of weight roomed Penn State a little bit. I mean, there were multiple times where they just literally truck stick, like blew him over. Spanos on a goal, just like leaned his shoulder into a defender, bowled him over, and then had hands free. Stamos did on a clear. Maryland looked bigger, stronger than Penn State, more athletic. And I think you saw this with Notre Dame. Duke, I don't think it's an athleticism thing. I think they've got great athletes, but one of our followers tweeted this out. Duke feels like a team of like a bunch of great defensive midfielders. Like they have one of the best defensive midfield groups in the country, and they've got they're strong in the middle of the field. Like defensively, they wasn't good today, but they've played well. Offensively, there's just not a lot of. I think people are going to do the thing with Duke of, man, they have as much talent as anybody, and they just can't seem to put it together. That was true in the last couple of years. I don't see that this year. I don't think they have the. I don't think they got the hitters. I just don't see the high end guys on. There's no Owen Duffy or Petro on Duke offensively. There's no Chris Kavanaugh, Jordan Faison. They don't got even Syracuse, like Leo and those. Like I just don't. Today Eric Molliver has probably been their best offensive player. Sean Light didn't play for Notre Dame, and Molliver had no goals and 2 assists. McAdory 2 goals and 1 assist. I just don't. They're not particularly deep. Danowski teams, you'd always say at least they ran a bunch of guys. They're not getting production for down the lineup. I just don't think there's. Yeah, I don't think the story with this team is they're kind of lacking in talent, and they need to, kind of put it together. I think they've played together. I just don't know that they've got the dudes. Yeah, I don't know if they have the horses. And they're not great at face-off with, the true freshman coming in at face-off, 43%. Jameson's been good, but not exceptional. So, yeah, I just think they look like they ran into it looked to me, these 2 games were like they were weight class games. That's what it came off of. Maryland and Notre Dame looked like heavyweights, and Penn State and Duke looked like middleweights. Maryland and Notre Dame just look at 2 teams who are in a different tier of class of team in the country.
Mark says how many remaining wins? So they got at BU, home against UNC and Syracuse, at UVA. Well, they're guaranteed at least 1 because they always beat Virginia.
2.
So, 2. Yeah, I think they could.
I think they'll beat BU.
Depends on how they look against BU next year.
I think they'll beat BU. I don't really see much of a. That game was a little tricky for them last year, but I think they'll beat BU. I think they'll beat Virginia. Houston, yeah, USC. Again, it's different. Notre Dame's still.
UNC looks like much better than Duke right now, and I could see Duke having a good effort against Cuse.
Cuse always plays.
It's always a good game between 2 of them. Yeah, Cuse, but that's the thing. Cuse always overperforms against Duke, and now that Cuse is in better shape than Duke, how's that going to do? And we saw what happened last year when Cuse played Duke. So, yeah, I don't know. We're going to be getting into extra time in a moment, but one other game we wanted to point out in Ivy League play, Princeton, all apologies. Last week was looking like the end of the gauntlet for the Tigers. Then Dartmouth beat Penn after we were done with the show, so their gauntlet got extended by another week. But the Tigers get yet another top 20 win to get to 6-2. 11-8 victory in the cold in New Hampshire was the only place in the Northeast that was not getting the record high temperatures today. But even in defeat, Big Green, kudos to them. They really gave a tough fight, even though Princeton won by 3. A lot of that was them padding the lead there at the end. They were hanging really tight with them. They got off to the lead in the beginning, clawed their way back in when Princeton got the lead, and it was a 1-goal game for the majority of that second half. So Big Green have something rolling here in Ivy League play. Despite the loss, they're at 7-2. Had the win against Penn already, and that's going to set up a very interesting game in New Hampshire next week, taking on their New England rival in Harvard. So it's going to be some intrigue there in Lebanon. Hanover.
Hanover.
Get my new geography mixed up. Hanover and Lebanon are right next to each other. But Mark says, throw out the no moral victories mantra. This was a moral victory. So, yeah. So,
I mean,
I'd say another great win for Princeton.
I think this team's good enough to. I think this team might be good enough to not care about moral victories.
Yeah, the team stats are wild here. Princeton outshot Dartmouth 60-34. But shout out to Dartmouth's goalie Morrell. Finished the game with 21 saves. Dartmouth committed to 18 turnovers to 6 turnovers for Princeton. Princeton, I think the caused turnovers was even more stark. Princeton had 12 caused turnovers to 3 caused turnovers for Dartmouth. So just kind of a wild game. But obviously, Dartmouth's goalie had a Herculean effort to keep him in the game. Mason Morrell.
That's an hour, by the way. So we're in extra time.
The save percentage in this game is Craddock saved 62%.
Yeah, that's like a really good case for goalies. But just the 21 stop by Morrell really kind of jumps out there, especially with Princeton with having 60 shots in total. But it was just kind of a wild game. But no, you're right, Jacob. They don't need to apologize for anything. They fought valiantly and lost, but they were kind of hanging with Princeton throughout the game. But Princeton kind of pretty much the difference makers that 5-goal second period. That really, gives them the cushion going into the halftime with a 6-1 lead, after falling down 3-1 in the first quarter. But Dartmouth is stealing Penn's mojo, or the steezy, as the kid said when I was younger. The style, that really tight defense, kind of physical, able to play and maybe even enjoy that rock fight type of games. And man, I wouldn't want to face them in the Ivy League tournament. It's in terms of if I think Princeton may end up having to play them again if things fall into play. If they're Cornell's number one, but depending on Harvard does. But I'm right. If I was Princeton, I was I would love to not have to play these guys again, but it may happen. And Dartmouth is definitely a surprise of the season. I think in the Ivy, and potentially a surprise for around the nation. I guess Fairfield has something to say about that in terms of how well they've been playing this year. But Dartmouth is really it pleasantly surprised me. I think Sean Cornwell's done a tremendous job there, and feels like they're definitely on the right course. And especially it juxtaposes what the rest of the Ivy is kind of known for high octane offenses, free flowing, and then you have this team that's kind of on the other end of the spectrum. And, it's doing great for them this year. Loss is the loss, of course, but 7-2 now, 1-1 in the Ivy. Still very much in the hunt. So the Big Green is definitely having a bounce back year. And this is you lost, but there's nothing to be ashamed about here. This is really
nothing to be ashamed about. I don't think. Look, I think they should make the Ivy League tournament. So I don't think moral victories. You're going to see these guys again. So to me, it's a matter of trying to win the game. If you're going to make the Ivy League tournament, I think they will. I think they're going to need to beat maybe both of Brown and Yale in order to. Yale's got 1 win, so they probably need to beat Yale for sure. I think they can do that with how they're. It's the thing we always talk with Penn about being that change up curveball. I don't think it's a strategy to get you to the top of the Ivy. Long term, if they want to get to the top, you're gonna have to score goals to win the Ivy. It's just the way it is. But to do what they're doing as far as being a tough out and as far as getting to, because would you rather bank, if you're banking on a team to get to 4th, would you rather bank on a Yale team that is basically just the worst version of all these other teams? They have a good offense and a bad defense. Or would you rather bank on a team that is a great defensive team and offense can maybe do enough? I don't know how we saw. I think we saw this as now again. This game 60 shots for Princeton is insane. It's almost 1.5 shots per possession. But we've seen what they can we've seen what the starting team kind of do and how they've played defensively in this game. This is something maybe you could replicate a little more rather than I don't know what Yale's path to. I mean, Cornell, again, like they were just all over them early on. So, yeah, good outing, and Princeton racks up its 5th top 20 win of the season out of six games. Fifth top 15 win. There you go. Dartmouth's 14th in RPI. Duke is 10th.
North Carolina's 4. Harvard's 5th.
North Carolina's
Penn
4.
State's 6.
4, 5, 6, 10, 14.
And their 2 losses are to 2 Maryland and 8 Cornell.
Yeah, 7 Cornell right now. I'm just updating.
Oh, it's just updated. Okay, they flip-flop with Q's. Yep.
Cornell flip-flop with Q's.
All right. Let's go around the scoreboard. So last night's games, friends at Lacrosse Reference pointed this out. Probably the biggest upset in the past 3 years in terms of the numbers. Wagner's 12-11 victory over LIU in overtime. Wagner was like second to last with 1 win, and LIU was in the 20s or 30s at 7-1. Well, Wagner comes away with the victory, and this is the week after I gave LIU some props with the top 20 vote. So go figure on that one. And in the Patriot League, Lafayette beats Bucknell 14-5. Lafayette's at 7-3 and 3-2 in the Patriot League. So nice turnaround for the Leopards. On today's scoreboard, Canisius beats Manhattan 8-7. Monmouth with a CAA victory over Hampton 24-4. Mercer beats Queens 12-11. Jacksonville 15-11 victory over Air Force. Utah X out an 11-9 victory over Bellarmine. Bryant in America East play with a 12-7 win over UMBC. VMI beats Cleveland State 11-9. Cornell flexes their muscle against Penn 15-5. So absolutely no number 1 ranking hangover for the Big Red as they demolish the Quakers.
CJ Kirst,
don't look
quiet 5 points for CJ Kirst.
Wow. Don't look now. Don't look now, but after ripping them a new one after losing to Siena, the Hofstra Pride are 3-0 in CAA play.
Just motivated them. You just game the
Props to Seth for listening to us and taking it to heart. You're bringing Pride back on Long Island. More on that in a second too, because there's another good Long Island victory. 17-10 victory for the Pride over Delaware. So very impressive win for the Pride. Lemoyne 8-5 victory over Detroit Mercy. Towson wins 12-8 over Drexel. So speaking of CAA teams turning around things pretty nicely, that's 3-0 in conference play for your Tigers, Jake.
Yeah, CAA is going to be, and we said it, Thunderdome feels like the apt description.
Yes, because you know why? Because we now no longer have no more undefeated teams. Stony Brook with a 17-16 victory over Fairfield. That is Fairfield's first loss of the season. That means there are no more undefeated teams in men's D1 lacrosse. Kind of kicking myself for not making the trip out to Stony Brook for that one today. Nice weather and a very good game there. With the Seawolves with the big victory there. Big East play. Georgetown survives a scare from Providence, 14-13 win in D.C. Providence got off to a quick start in that one, and Georgetown has to hold off the Friars there at the end to come away with the win there. High Point 9-7 victory over Hobart. Gentlemen, we are going to be going into April, and the Loyola Greyhounds have yet to win a game. 7-3 Lehigh wins in that one. Had a fun one in the MAC. Sacred Heart beats Marist 13-12 in overtime. That is a game that could play a pivotal role in who's going to be the top seed in the MAAC, though there is a little bit of a logjam with 4 one-loss teams now there, but Sacred Heart with the victory in OT in Connecticut. Big East play. Marquette beats St. John's 13-8. Siena 12-8 victory over Mount St. Mary's. Got an upset in the A10. This was a game we were talking about this morning. Could have some sneaky vibes to it, and it ends up being the case. UMass rebounds from that loss to Brown last week, and close game against UMass Lowell. They come back to A10 play and knock off St. Joe's in Philly, 11-10. So UMass starts off A10 play with a win, and St. Joe's starts A10 play with a loss. Harvard had a non-con game against Binghamton.
Freshman goalie Owen Salinger for UMass. When he's saving 61% on the season, but he made a tremendous save late in this game. St. Joe's was down 2 goals. They got it to 11-10. They won the faceoff, and they got a great look game. But Salinger made the stop. He made saved 57% on the day. Even in the loss to Brown, he had 16 stops on 24 shots. Hasn't been below 50% all season in any game for the Minutemen. So, I mean, a long line of great goalies for UMass. You think back to Sean Scanone, some of those guys, even way back to 2006. So, another in kind of following in that lineage. Big win for the Minutemen.
Mm-hmm. Harvard follows up their big Boston beatdown to BU midweek with another non-con win, 17-12 over Binghamton. Vermont, 18-7's NJIT. There's the meme score. In Big Ten, Ohio State, frisky Rutgers performance once again, but Buckeyes hold on to win 13-11.
Nation's longest winning streak.
Ohio State is 2-0 in Big Ten play for the first time since 2015. A long time.
Robert Morris wins 17-8 over Mercyhurst in the Western PA Derby. First ever Western PA Derby, because this is Mercyhurst's first year in D1. So that is the first Western Pennsylvania Derby. We've called it that, or the I-79 Derby, whatever you want to do. Moon Township versus Erie on display. Robert Morris 17-8 over Mercyhurst. Albany 17-6 win over UMass Lowell. Colgate with a 14-9 victory over Navy. So again, there's hot Colgate coming back. Richmond 22-5 win over St. Bonaventure. Iona with their first ever conference win. They take down Quinnipiac 12-8. Yale beats Brown 15-12. So that's Yale's first Ivy League win of the season there. Boston versus Worcester on display. BU rebounds from that loss to Harvard midweek with a 16-4 drubbing of Holy Cross. And currently in a weather delay in Denver. Denver is up 7-6 in the fourth quarter. I believe they are trying to restart that. Let me see. When is the soonest they can restart that? In about another 5 minutes or so, I think, is the earliest they can restart. So be on the lookout for when that is going up, back up. Also, if the Midcoast Sports feed ever wants to go a full game without any hiccups. So, any final thoughts on this week?
No, I think not as much chaos as last week, but you still got some more good games, some big results. I think feels like maybe a bit of a, I don't want to say a separation yet, but I think you're looking at Cornell, you're looking at Maryland, you look at Princeton, you look at how Notre Dame's starting to put it together, and I mean, maybe I'm saying that those were the 4 teams that me and Safe, off the dome, just picked who we thought would make the Final Four. And I went with those 4 teams. I don't know if the bracket will shape out that way, but I do think there's a potential of those 4 teams kind of looking maybe a little bit ahead of the pack without Notre Dame's dominant last 2 weeks against Michigan and Duke. Cornell's just not blowing a 4-goal lead with a 2-minute non-releasable penalty from being undefeated. Princeton has played the toughest schedule, and Maryland, we kind of wondered if that loss to Michigan kind of portended anything, and still might. I mean, it wasn't their cleanest game against Penn State, but still, I mean, they dominated from start to finish. They've won their last 3 games by 5, 6, 11. Then they beat Notre Dame by 1. After that was Princeton 4, Q's 4. So I think maybe potentially, and then you got after that maybe a group with Carolina, Army, Ohio State, Q's, potentially maybe another, like a connects 4 teams grouping. But we'll see. Ohio State's, as safe said, has the nation's longest win streak. They have Maryland coming in a couple weeks. We'll see how ACC play continues. Carolina begins ACC play next week at home against Virginia. It's definitely if there's any separation, it's not. It's very minimal, very, very minimal. I don't think, as Safe mentioned, you got 2 teams with 4 top 5 wins, and everybody else has got 5 from the RPI. And Notre Dame was still ranked 7th this week. Army was ranked 9th and beat Carolina. So there's not a outstanding team yet. There's a couple teams I think that look like they could be, but as of yet, we got a lot of good teams, and then some teams behind them, and some teams further behind them. So it's going to be a fascinating April, seeing how how they come down the stretch before Selection Sunday.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if Rutgers is going to have something for Maryland. Jake, we've always joked around like Rutgers was peak Rutgers. One thing that just couldn't beat was Maryland, despite being able to almost beat like everybody else. But 5:00 game in Jersey the week before the Ohio State games, definitely like kind of a challenging stretch for Maryland. It's kind of different than Hopkins' stretch, but 2 road games, and then your biggest rival, in the sport at College Park to end the regular season. Like, it's just like
it's the Big Ten, man.
That Big Ten's going to be a gauntlet, a rock fight for everybody.
I said I don't think there's going to be any Big Ten game decided by more than 5 goals this year, and this week it was 5, 3, and 3 as the spreads. I don't think there's I still think Hopkins looks rough. I still think Hopkins will snag a win somewhere in these next 3 weeks.
From your lips to God's ears, Jake.
Look, Michigan was. They had the standings this week were literally the inversion of the preseason poll.
Mm-hmm.
And Ohio State, Michigan are 2-0 on top of the league right now. So, that kind of tells you. I mean, these conference races are going to be the only conference race where there feels a lot of drama right now is the Ivy, just because I think there's
Cornell has the tiebreakers in hand with Princeton.
Yeah, and Princeton beat Harvard, so Princeton's schedule the rest of the way is kind of good. Princeton has a stretch where they don't play like any top 20 teams.
That's right. Harvard Cornell still hasn't played yet, but yeah.
So I mean, there's still thinking about the last team and whoever makes that 4th spot in the Ivy League tournament. But I mean, look, you saw in the Big East today, Georgetown was in a dogfight with Providence. Denver demolishes Duke last week and is currently, as we mentioned, the weather delay, up 1 goal on a Villanova team that has, after they beat Yale to start the season, is or Yale in their second game is only 2 of their last 6. So they did beat Brown by 7 last. But yeah, like these races, UMass upset St. Joe's. These league races are going to be really, really tight next month.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, actually, before we go, Mark says Harvard over Cornell 3-way tie. Don't make us do math.
Have to ask Chris. Tiebreakers.
All righty. So we liked having this convo. So if you liked us having this convo, leave a like for us. And if you're watching this on replay, leave a comment. And we recommend hitting the subscribe button too. So whenever we go live, you can join the fun the next time we go around. For next Saturday, got another fun slate. We got to
leave a comment. Here, comment what 4 teams you think will make the Final Four. We're 2 done down the season. Who do you think makes the Final Four? Leave that as your comment.
Yeah, we're now 2/3 of the way through the regular season, pretty much. But yeah, next week going to be a fun one too. You got Notre Dame Cuse in the Dome. Duke BU's a sneaky good non-con game, late season non-con game. So Army Colgate.
Yeah.
So
Michigan, Penn State, Big Ten Network, Dartmouth, Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
4 weekends of regular season play and then conference tournament and then Selection Sunday. It's coming back. It's coming. It's rushing in.
It's a season takes forever to get here, but then it's fleeting, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
they do the same thing about like economic crashes, right? It's like nothing really happens at all. So it's just everything at once.
So they felt 1929. So
Black Sunday.
enjoy the roaring 20s. That is the 2025 NCAA men's lacrosse season while you can.
The crash is coming soon.
May the 4th, exactly. It's made for the whole Star Wars. Yeah, somebody's gonna
buy the dip when you're watching a random PLL weekend in June and longing for watching your Duke Blue Devils or your Maryland Terrapins or something.
Yeah, who's going to be leaving, brothers? Hopkins or Duke? So
there you go. That's the comment. That's your comment. Who's the Lehman brothers of the season? Hopkins or Duke?
Does that make Sally Mae and Penny Mac? Yeah, Hopkins. Because I was going to say, who's the old timers that are having bad years? It's really just Hopkins. So the rest of the
Loyola.
Yeah.
You're slowly seeing Fan Lax like
or Denver.
The Hopkins thread is like the end of Blue Chips where the alum goes crazy. You will never coach in this country again. I feel like we're like one more Loyola loss away from that in their thread in Fan Lax.
All right, so
get out of here.
Take care, everyone.
Jake, what play you watching? What's the play?
Mamma Mia. Here we go again. Or here I go again.
An American classic.
So
Great.
That's where I'm going.
Love ABBA music.
Ryan, hit the Eastern Motors Club.
Yeah, there we go. All righty.
Becky Lynch for president.
Ford, Honda, Chevy, Beamers, and minivans, over 600 cars, trucks, SUVs. Are you listening, man? Let Eastern Motors put you in a car today. Let Eastern Motors finance it all the way.